What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to talk about what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm also going to break down some very important news about their earnings that are coming out and how they may affect the markets, and also what TA is suggesting for many different stocks. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about what on earth the technical analysis is telling us, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 3 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so for the entire market, we have some very, very big things going on. We have some big earnings coming out for the week. First off, we're going to be starting off with SoFi and just a couple of other like biotech companies, also energy companies as well, such as Transocean. And then for Tuesday, we have AMD, Uber, and Pfizer all reporting earnings. That's going to be very important, especially AMD for many of those chip stocks out there. Then going into Wednesday, we have CVS, PayPal, and Shopify. PayPal is going to be a big one for Wednesday, so make sure you're ready for that. Then Thursday is going to be an absolutely massive day as we have Amazon and Aapl all reporting earnings. And this is going to have a massive effect on the market going into Friday and also next week. Guidance is going to be very important, so make sure you're ready and prepared for anything. And don't forget, the market is going to make some very, very volatile moves, especially between Thursday and Friday. Now, when it comes to data coming out, for tomorrow specifically, we just have the PMI report coming out 15 minutes after the market opens or at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you're prepared for that. This could lead to some volatility depending on what the PMI is telling us. And this is going to give us a gauge about how the economy is looking. If this is too low over and over again, that could be a recessionary indicator. But don't forget, the Fed has a very different view on that now. They're not even forecasting a recession, according to Jerome Powell. So we'll see what happens. I mean, moving forward, I still believe a recession is on the table, but we're going to be very careful in just looking at data every single day just to be safe. Now, moving forward, just don't forget that there could be some volatility on many different sectors, especially on the banking side and for finance because of like SoFi and a couple of banks coming out for tomorrow. But besides that, it's not going to be that crazy in my opinion. So do expect some volatility nonetheless. But anyways, let's talk about the market. What's going on with all these different stocks? So for SPY to start us off, this thing is very, very stationary right now, just going back and back and forth, kind of range bound. It's been basically range bound between this like 452 area as its support and around like 458 as resistance for quite a while. This has been going on for over a week for the time being, more than a week. Actually, it's been almost 2 weeks in terms of trading days. So the real question is, how will the market move going forward? So for now, we're going to be watching all these different support and resistance levels, and we're going to be watching to see how it reacts. I just want to mention that for the time being, it's very stationary, and we do have a tendency of trying to pump near these opens that happen many, many times in a row. I think there's a good chance we're going to see SPY try to attempt to break 458 on Monday, then try to push for this imbalance all the way up here around this like almost 460 area. Then I think it may actually fail to break, and it may actually cool off a little bit and come right back down and then end up closing very, very flat. However, it's going to be dictated by some big earnings, and because we have some big earnings coming out on like Wednesday through Thursday, we could see the market uptrend approaching them, at least during those days, because there's going to be a lot of hype and excitement from these big tech companies that could push them up. However, after earnings, I mean, I can't predict that part, and that could lead to some downside or even upside, who knows? So we have to be very careful and be very careful when it comes to holding positions overnight. Now, IWM is looking quite nice right now, in my opinion. It's been, consolidating very nicely, but it's on a nice uptrend so far. And on the 4-hour time frame, you could see it right about here. This thing is once again continuing to rip to the upside and starting to show some strength as we're seeing this transition in the markets. Now, for tomorrow, it could slow down a little bit, maybe retest this 195 area, then just try to keep going. And there's a good chance it may actually get a pump as well. So maybe the pre-market's a little down, then starts pumping into open. And then we're going to be watching this 198 resistance. If that breaks, there's 198.5, then 200. For support, there's 196.2, 195.69, then 194. My gut tells me there's going to be some upside coming, so we're going to be very, very careful and just watch it nonetheless. For Tesla, this is looking quite decent so far. So Tesla's been very, very boring, reacting to a lot of news, which is a little bit hard to predict. And it's been stuck between the 50 EMA as its resistance, this yellow line up here on the 4-hour time frame. Then we have the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, the red line down here as its support. So if we reject off the 50 EMA, it's going to come right back down, and it's going to be retesting this 262.5 support. If that fails us, it's going to likely fill this gap and come all the way down to 256 and then try to bounce very close to our 200. If it manages to hold around this range for a longer and more extended period of time, we're going to be watching it attempt to break 268. If it breaks that, it's going to retest 274. If that breaks, it's going to come all the way up to about 280 for this imbalance fill, most likely. Now, it is forming a possible like double bottom right here, right? We have a nice double bottom formation. It's forming like a nice W formation. The odds do favor upside for Tesla, and the odds favor this from a technical analysis perspective. That's going to try to make its way up to around 274. However, just to be safe, okay, I don't want to solely talk about technicals because technicals alone, as of right now for Tesla, are not very sufficient because the news has been dictating Tesla all over the place, right? A couple of days ago, we had bearish news for Tesla that came down after getting some downgrades. Then it pumped very nicely off some more bullish news involving India. Then it came down, had a sideways day. It came down off some bearish news as well with the recall news and things like that. Then we got a very nice pump again on Friday after some more bullish Indian news came out, right? Some talks about Indian investments, which is very, very bullish. So my point is the news is just all over the place. One day it's good news, one day it's bad news, and that's going to dictate Tesla the most. So make sure you watch the news carefully for the stock. But for confirmation of any breaks to the upside, if you have like decent news, even if there's no news, you want to watch the levels as well. Does it break this 50 EMA? If it does it has bullish potential. Does it reject off the CMA? Then it could come down. From a technical standpoint, like I said, the odds favored this forming a double bottom. It already formed a double bottom. They're getting a nice bounce and trying to push for like 280 or so. 274 first and possibly 280. The odds favored that, but just to be safe, watch for confirmation. For NEO, I want to call this one out because NEO is once again continuing to rip to the upside. I made a video yesterday about it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I just want to mention that the deliveries are looking really good for it. It could retrace a little bit, retest this like 14.5 area, then try to keep going, or it might just, flat out just keep going because we know deliveries are most likely going to be very, very strong for the company. You're going to most likely break an all-time high record, and it's going to be very, very awesome to witness. The real question is by how much will they break the record with the new ES6 coming out? Will it be a small beat, 1,000 more than their previous record, or is it going to be like 2,000 to 3,000 higher than their previous record? That's very possible. We'll have to wait and see. Overall, it looks very bullish. And don't forget, Abu Dhabi, excuse me, they invested into NEO not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. And since then, it's been uptrending as well. So they made a very, very good choice, made a crazy return on that investment. Could it be because they knew a lot of information, or could it be because of other reasons? Who knows? But for now, congratulations to them. Uh, for and I forgot to mention, hold on, for NEO, for resistance levels, don't forget about 15.25, 16, and then 16.8, and then 17 to 17.5 as your resistance levels. Anyways, for Aapl is continuing to uptrend, respecting a nice uptrend so far. It's very slow in terms of this uptrend. It's not that strong, but we could see more volatility on the day it approaches its earnings. So for Aapl, there's a good chance this thing could retrace just a tiny bit, retest 195 in the pre-market, then try to push up. If it breaks 196, you're going to be watching 197.2. If that breaks, then we have 198.2, then 198.5 as the resistance levels. Break that, and then we have 200 coming up shortly after. From a technical standpoint, it looks bullish. The overall trend is looking strong for Aapl, but don't forget earnings will dictate which way it goes starting after the market closes on Thursday. So be very careful. We have big days ahead of us, and we're going to be watching this all very carefully. Now, in my opinion, from a technical standpoint, we might see Aapl be a little stationary to start off the week, but then by like Wednesday to Thursday, I think it's going to start pumping. We could see it try to make its way up to help pump the markets, and then it's going to change depending on how things go with earnings. Now for the triple Q, let me just mention that we have supported 182, 382. Sorry about that, guys. 382, 380, then 378 as your supports. Watch those three levels of supports. For resistance, you want to see it break above 385. If that breaks, it's going to push all the way up for about 388. My good tells me it may retrace in the pre-market once again, retest like 382 or so, then try to bounce. And as long as it holds these supports, we could see this thing try to push up. It may retrace just a little bit, 382 to 380, then try to bounce after that. And if it breaks this, maybe like a little bit later into the week by like Tuesday or Wednesday, if 385 breaks, we're going to be watching this thing push up for 388. For Nvidia, it looks more bullish in my opinion. Nice inverse head and shoulder structure. It could retrace a little bit in the morning to retest around like 462. If that fails us, then we have like 456, then 450. I believe it may retrace just a tiny bit, but then it's going to try to bounce and it's going to try to push up for this imbalance up here. We have a very, very nice level up here around this 478th level. It's about 480. Small retracement and a nice bounce and a push for 480 is what I'm going to be looking for. For confirmation of that, watch it break and hold above the resistance around this like 470 area. If it manages to hold above that, not just get a quick rejection. If it gets above 474, that's even more confirmation, and it's going to just fly all the way up this target up here for 478. I think there's a good chance it's going to do it very soon. For Microsoft, there's a possible inverse head and shoulders structure that is forming, but if that is the case, we might see this thing retrace a little bit, retest like 334, make its way right back up to the 50 EMA, then trade kind of sideways for a day or two before this thing makes an attempt to break to the upside. I think it's looking like an inverse head and shoulders is forming, but just for confirmation, you want to see it break up. Now, if the market does retrace, you're going to be watching it retest 332. If that fails us, we have this gap all the way down to 330, and then once again, it could break even lower and invalidates the inverse head and shoulders that's possibly forming. I believe right now this is valid, so there's a chance we may retrace a little bit, and it's just a matter of telling, does this thing come down to fill the gap and fail? Does it look weak, or does this thing retrace a little bit, then try to rebound and eventually from the right shoulder and then start pumping? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with everyone, but I'm leaning a little bit more in the direction of this inverse head and shoulder structure forming, and it does look like we might see Microsoft try to rebound a little bit. Now, for AMD, this is going to be an interesting one. We're going to be watching, first off, 110, 109, and 107 are supports. For resistance, you're going to be watching 113, and after that, we have about 115. Break 115, then we have 118, 120, and 121. My gut tells me this is looking like a nice accumulation, and this thing's going to try to push up for about 118 at least. I think it's going to try to pump approaching its earnings, so make sure you keep this in your mind. We might see some upside for AMD. Finally, guys, I'm going to try to keep this one kind of short now. I want to just briefly go over Coinbase. I mean, this is looking a little weak still. It got a nice pump. Now it's continuing to downtrend. We have this imbalance down here on this 80 level, but I'm going to be watching this 91 support. I think it may pop in the morning, retest 97, then start retracing a little bit. And it may just trade very sideways tomorrow and make its way down to about 92, bounce off that, and close very, very flat as well. For Google, you're going to be watching, can this thing continue to break to the upside? It's continuing to look quite strong. If it breaks this 135 resistance, I'm going to be watching it push for about 137 or so. Once again, this is like a very, very high level Google has been at, but looking at the levels right about here, I was actually eyeing this not too long ago around this 137 area. We have this imbalance up here around this like 137 area, and then we have this unfilled gap around like 141. So what I'm basically trying to say is that it looks more bullish. It looks like it wants to go up to 137, but we have to break 135 first. Then on top of that, when you look at the charts on the 30 minutes time frame, if it breaks below our 132 supports, then we could come all the way down to about 130 and 129. What do I think is more likely? It looks more bullish right now. It looks like it wants to break out. It may retrace to about 132, then try to continue pushing. And we're going to be watching 134 to be retested. I don't know if it's going to break it or not. If it does break, then watch 135 and 137. But for now, it's looking quite strong. Amazon may uptrend approaching its earnings, but for now, it's like trying to retest 133. If that breaks, you're going to be watching 135. If it breaks down, you'll be watching 132 as support. If that fails us, you're going to be watching it come all the way down to about 130.32. In my opinion, it's kind of in the middle. I think it may trade a little sideways tomorrow and then try to push up on Wednesday or so, Wednesday to Thursday. Finally, for Meta, same thing. We're going to be watching its support around the 50 EMA, around this 320 area. I think this may be retested. Then it might bounce off that and try to make its way up to about 330. All right, so that's what I'm seeing for now. I think Meta does have the potential to break above that, but for now, we're just going to be patient. All right, guys, so watch your levels carefully. Watch for confirmations, especially on Tesla. Watch confirmation, see which way it breaks, which EMAs it tests, and then be very patient as we have a lot of earnings, some data coming out 15 minutes after the market opens. And this week is going to be massive by the time we get to the middle of it, as we have PayPal's earnings. And then after that, for Thursday, we have Apple, Amazon, and Coinbase. All right, so let's be very careful. I forgot to mention one thing about Coinbase. For now, it does look a little weak, but approaching its earnings, all right, by like the later days, maybe Tuesday through maybe by like Wednesday or so, we're going to start to see this thing possibly uptrend a little bit. I don't think it's going to be crazy strong like what we saw before, but I do believe it has potential to uptrend a bit. And we're going to be watching it carefully after earnings come out. So a little bit later on down the road, I see it potentially pumping. But for the short term, has been looking kind of weak. We could see a downtrend just a little bit. once again, trade sideways, maybe downtrend just a tiny bit, and then we will just watch it from there. All right, so that's what I have for this one. Thank you all so much for listening. Watch Support and Resistance, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon, as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace